I'm sure people are aware of what happened recently in Montreal, or as people in France would say, Montreal, the francophone Canadians. I'm not one of those people, which sadly, I took French for up to grade 10 and kind of still remember some of it. Let's just say that. But it was chaotic what happened in Montreal. The scenes and scenarios that were being shown on platforms, shown all over social media. People are just absolutely bombasted by what was going on, and politicians react to it. But there's a bit of a story to this. There's a bit of a controversial story that's not being addressed, which we'll get into in this segment here. So this goes into detail of anti-NATO protests in Montreal continues as politicians denounce Friday's violence. So I've heard different takes of this. I've heard that this was an anti-NATO protest in regards to the NATO summit that was happening in a venue at Montreal. I've heard this was a anti-genocide, pro-Palestine rally. There was also a pro-Israel rally that was also commencing to try to counteract that. So it was almost like a Mexican standoff that happened in Montreal over the weekend. Kind of getting into this kind of commotion, kind of, putting fire to what was already going to escalate into this tension. So this is brought to you by City News. And before we get into the article, I want to show some of the videos that were highlighted across social media, just the devastation on foot. But also, I want you to take notice on certain aspects of these videos, because there's a lot that's not being addressed with the mainstream media and people commenting on this that I want to bring attention to this. So, for example, this is obviously devastation. Breaking windows. Now, the reason I said pay attention to this, pay close attention to this, is because of, if you look closely, notice how, again, a lot of these rioters that we see constantly throughout social media, whether it being, the January 6th Fedsurrection that we now know is done by infiltrators with the FBI, commencing this kind of riot attack on the Capitol to combat a political movement behind Donald Trump. That's the MAGA movement. They were trying to cultivate that. Or whether being the Minneapolis riots, you notice how these people that are purposely instigating riots, that are instigating the destruction of these windows, are completely blacked out. They're wearing full black, full on masks, so you can't even see their face. And they are concealing their identities in complete full getup. Now, how many times have we seen this before? How many times have we seen this with any sort of rally that started with peace intentions, like Free Palestine, with the same as January 6th, same with Black Lives Matter, and get infiltrated by insiders? How many times have we seen this before? How many times have we seen civilians, they look like civilians, but they're all decked out, covered up, so we can't tell them who exactly these people are? They're instigating these riots. They're instigating this kind of reckless behavior to downgrade the intentions of the rally. So now people that are watching this are going to look at this and go, oh, these, people, Canadians that are protesting against NATO, they're a bunch of ruthless thugs. They're a bunch of traitors. They're a bunch of terrorists. They're breaking, businesses apart and setting it on fire and breaking windows. But here's another clip to show you here on this, too. So there's the police finally showing up. So there's the police showing up. And you notice how the police there You notice how in that video there, compared to what happened with the Freedom Convoy, that's another situation that instigated by people that went inside posing as regular civilians to discredit that movement. You notice how the cops reacted from that compared to this. Like, Ottawa Police, the RCMP, the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, they cracked heads of the peaceful protesters of the Freedom Convoy that were just outside the Capitol building, outside Parliament Hill, and protesting against the mandates peacefully with the truckers. And you had police officers cracking the heads of those people. They were toppling them. They were starting fistfights. They were engaging that violence to peaceful protesters. Here you have agitators in full full concealed, with their masks, with black clothing, so we can't identify them. And the most that you're seeing these cops are doing, they're in full riot gear. Full riot gear. The most you're seeing them doing is the one guy holding up the pepper spray, macing the guy. So, I have some questions. I have some inquiries to why exactly the cops, and we've seen this so many times before, why cops get so agitated when it's a peaceful demonstration like the Freedom Convoy compared to actual destruction like this. So it comes to my conclusion. Well, let's watch more of this and then we'll discuss further on, because there's another clip to this too. Watch. I mean, look at that. All of them. All of them. Completely faced out. Now, how many times have we seen pro-Palestine rallies, anti-genocide, peaceful demonstrations that go to the level that they're wearing? Most of these people will go out in regular clothes. They want to show themselves. They want to showcase themselves in support of their motions, in support of what they truly stand for. However, these individuals that we've seen time and time again, that just come around to all these different rallies that start off peaceful, somehow go into a full-blown riot to almost elaborate to discredit those peaceful rallies that we've seen time and time again, which is why, again, I ask these questions. So here's the article here. It says, anti-NATO protesters gather again in Montreal on Saturday to demand Canada withdraw from the alliance a day after a demonstration organized by different groups resulted in arrests, burned cars, and shattered windows. Politicians in the Prime Minister's cabinet, opposition parties, as well as Quebec leaders have called the violence during Friday's anti-NATO demonstration acts of anti-Semitism. That's hilarious in the fact that they're trying to pinpoint this as strictly an anti-NATO rally, but also try to throw in the anti-Semitism excuse into a critique on NATO. So I guess critiquing NATO as they're aligning themselves into World War III is anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitic to be concerned about our national security in the threat of nuclear war. That's what our politicians, our cabinet ministers are worried about. But protesters deny the claim, saying they demonstrate against the complicity of NATO member countries in a war that has killed thousands of Palestinians. Police spokesperson Veronique Duboc said 3 people were arrested during a demonstration that began late afternoon Friday. She said police arrested a 22-year-old woman for obstructing police work and assaulting a police officer, as well as 2 men, 22 and 28, both for obstructing police work. All 3 men were released and will appear in court at a later date. Police said that during the march, smoke bombs were deployed, metal barriers were thrown into the streets and windows of businesses, and at the convention center, that's where NATO is, where NATO delegates have been meeting, were smashed. Friday's protest was organized by the groups Divest for Palestine and Convergence of Anti-Capitalist Struggles. Benoit Allard, a member of the Divest for Palestine, said he and several other protesters were injured by police and at least 4 protesters had to go to the hospital. He said the purpose of the protest was to demonstrate against what he calls NATO's complicity for Israel's military while it's conducting its genocide in Gaza, war crimes in Lebanon, Syria, and its enforcing illegal occupation of Palestinian territories. On Saturday afternoon, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called Friday's scenes appalling. Well, now the question is, where was our Prime Minister? Where was our elected leaders? Because they're coming out now denouncing the destruction, the chaos, the unfolding events that happened in Montreal. Where exactly was the Prime Minister in this? So acts of anti-Semitism, intimidation, and violence must be condemned whenever we see them, he said on X. There must be consequences and rioters held accountable. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on X accused the Prime Minister of being too busy to condemn a violent Hamas takeover of our streets. Then he followed up with a lengthy statement saying Trudeau has transformed Canada into a playground for foreign interference. Speaking to reporters at the Halifax International Security Forum on Saturday morning, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly and Defense Minister Bill Blair said the actions of the protesters were unacceptable. What we saw was not peaceful protests. What we saw was actual violence, hate, and anti-Semitism, as this has no place on our streets, Joly said. Those behaviors were unacceptable, and we condemned them, and in particular, the hatred and anti-Semitism that was on display in the strongest possible terms, said Blair. Quebec Premier François Legault also describes the scenes as anti-Semitic. Burning cars and smashing windows is not sending a message. It's about causing chaos. Such acts have no place in a peaceful society like Quebec, he wrote. Well, do you notice the pattern? Do you notice the pattern that these rallies that start off peaceful, that have peaceful intent to react to a situation where we are compliant to the annihilation, to the absolute destruction of innocent lives in Gaza, innocent lives in the West Bank, innocent lives in Lebanon and Syria, and these military interventions as a peacekeeping nation we're supposed to be. Do you notice how those rallies that intend to be peaceful automatically become full-blown riots in situations like this? Why exactly this riot in particular, also, I ask? Why exactly in particular, where NATO is holding their summit, that this became a full-blown riot? Why did we not see these riots on college campuses? Why did we not see this destruction in other means of free Palestine movements? Why are we only seeing this in places where we know that there's going to be this kind of chaos? Well, it seems to be a certain pattern, as discussed here. However, Allard rejected accusations of anti-Semitism. He said the protests were against the actions of the State of Israel and not Jewish people, adding that earlier this week, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On Thursday, the court said in a news release that there were reasonable grounds to believe Netanyahu committed the war crime of starvation as a method of warfare and the crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. About 80 people attended Saturday's anti-NATO protests in downtown Montreal, organized by the Le Mouvement Québécois pour la paix. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing French. Again, sad that I don't know much. I'm not more linguistic in French. holding signs that read Canada out of NATO and chanting solidarity with Palestine. Several attendants held Communist Party of Canada flags, while others hold Palestinian flags. Jad Banji, president of the Le Mouvement Québécois pour la Paix, said Canada should refuse to meet NATO military spending targets. He also said that despite calling itself a defensive alliance, NATO has destabilized multiple regions across the globe and created military conflicts, notably in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Kabanchi said Israel's military campaign in Gaza would not be possible without the arms provided by NATO members like the United States. And a policy of increasing accepting countries that were formerly part of the Soviet Union pushed Russia into invade Ukraine. Greg Boone, the group's vice president, said the group condemns Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but added NATO has helped provoke conflict in the region. I mean, right now, as we're speaking, the continuation of provoking Ukraine is decimating our national security. So, again, like the rally, the intention of this rally, I do agree with. I do agree that we need to put ourselves in accountability. We need to really sit down and figure out exactly if NATO is an ally towards us or if this is a criminal mafia organization, which has turned out to be for the military-industrial complex. And that's why NATO is threatening countries like Canada to meet their mark. Hey, you got to pay up more. You got to spend more on blowing up the rest of the world while your people are starving, while there's people on the streets, while there's homeless encampments all across Canada. All across Canada. That's why you see the defense minister, Bill Blair, going on to House of Commons floor and saying, hey, we need $800 million more to Ukraine as we're starving our nation. But why exactly this movement, why exactly this rally in Montreal did this explode into a riot? So I add this into it, to this mix here. This is what the Jerusalem Post put out here, and it says over 85,000 Quebec students strike for Gaza, call for intifada and final solution. The protest reportedly took all 12 floors of the main Concordia building, and that Free Gaza was sprayed painted onto lockers. So, what's interesting about this is that, well, I disagree with, spray painting onto the lockers and doing property damage. But notice how in this picture in particular, there are no people dressed in full black. There's no people with shielding up their faces. They're out there. They're out loud and proud of what they're protesting for, what they're campaigning for. And this person in particular, the one that's doing the Hitler salute, it looks like, seems to be reoccurring in a lot of these media implications of this riot, in all these publications. It seems to be a key figure that this woman that just seems to be out of nowhere, seems to be exactly at the point where she needs to be, where the cameras are, to do some sort of anti-Semitic gesture to discredit that movement. As we've seen multiple times throughout many different rallies, that they purposely do that. They purposely add infiltrators and insiders to decimate the true purpose, the true intents of what these rallies are supposed to be about. They're supposed to be about peace, supposed to be about ending the war, ending the genocide, ending, finding a resolution for a ceasefire. That's the whole intent of this. But we have instigators that are wrecking that message and trying to conflate that to being pro-terrorist and pro-Hamas, and how dare we do this? This is going to destruct the sovereignty of Canada and its Jewish community, as we're aligning ourselves with a military alliance mafia that's sending us to World War III. So, as I said, it's very similar to what we've seen before, like this. Fake undercover cop was caught starting a fire in one of the buildings in Minneapolis protest. When confronted and asked if he was a cop, He kept running. So this is in relation to Black Lives Matter, which now we know Black Lives Matter got infiltrated by deep state insiders to desecrate on the true intentions of that protest, the true intentions of what that march was supposed to be about. They did that purposely. They did that purposely to discredit those rallies. And what we've seen here is exact copies that we've seen time and time and time and time again to go after ordinary people that are critical of the establishment, critical of these globalist regimes like NATO, like AIPAC or the Israeli lobby or the Mossad or CSIS or the CIA, to discredit those movements of peace and solidarity and turn them into full-blown riots so that the news media and people on social media are going to look at this and go, oh, I can't support that. They're destructing businesses in that area. They're burning down an AutoZone in Minneapolis. They're destroying a Starbucks. They do that intentionally to discredit the peaceful rally. We have seen this time and time before. Even as the FBI has admitted to this. The former director of the FBI even said on Fox News one of their primal objectives is to go after rallies like Free Palestine. Is to go after these peaceful movements because it is a direct threat to the status quo, to the establishment of oppressing people. So that's where they get these undercover cops or these undercover insiders to dress all up. They get these Antifa insiders, these infiltrators, to dress up, pose as civilians, and then start attacking. And that's what you see on a lot of social media. That's what you see a lot on the news, is the people posing as civilians that are doing the utmost damage to discredit the entirety of the movement. Just like what happened recently in Amsterdam. So people may be aware of this, that there was a soccer match between Tel Aviv and I forget the other team, but it was in Amsterdam. And as the Jerusalem Post points out, just in case Mossad agents to join the Maccabi Tel Aviv FC trip to Amsterdam. Why would they need spy agents to go to a sports team to Amsterdam? Well, here's the kicker. As seen this other post here from the BBC, some Maccabi fans looking for a fight, witness tells BBC. And as this lady from the BBC News speaks out, I've spoken to a fan who went to the match last night who reports seeing Maccabi Tel Aviv supporters on Amsterdam Metro going up and down the carriages 3 or 4 times looking for a fight. Connor Dalton tells me, I felt worried. Everyone was going into the city, so everyone knew that this was going to happen. He adds that he is shocked by the portrayal of the incident in the media, adding that the attacks were completely provoked and Palestinian flags were torn down the night before. And then they also make the disclaimer at the bottom saying, as a reminder, authorities in the Netherlands have condemned anti-Semitism attacks on Israeli fans, with Amsterdam's mayor reporting Israeli supporters were actively sought out for violence across the city. So, while the rest of the world was saying, oh my God, how devastating that there's anti-Semitism all over the place, that there's a conspiracy for anti-Semitism to leak out all over the place, the reason they brought Mossad agents there wasn't for security reasons as it was to stir things up, as it was trying to trap people in Amsterdam who were protesting, who were making their voices heard about the genocide and looking deliberately to start a fight so then they can call it anti-Semitic, that they could say that Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and other territories, or like in Montreal we saw, can condemn everything and say it's an act of terrorism, it's an act of being against Jewish people, which we have stated multiple times that being against Israel and being against Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism, has nothing to do with it. The two are absolutely far apart. And the fact that they conflate the two is purposely done for political motivation like this. So that anyone that critiques the genocide, anyone that critiques the Zionist project, anyone that critiques the mass slaughtering of children and mothers and daughters and sons and fathers across all these different territories that they're now invading is considered anti-Semitic, even though that has nothing to do with Judaism whatsoever. In fact, it is a reflection of what true anti-Semitic is, and that is Zionism, because they're going after Jewish civilians that don't recognize Israel as a means of a peace-loving society that's the safe haven for Jewish civilians. They fear the Israeli state. They fear it because they know that they are in danger because they're not provoked into the Zionist movement. So, where was our prime minister in this? Well, it turns out that is Justin Trudeau, ladies and gentlemen, enjoying Taylor Swift's concert in Toronto. So as there was a riot going in Montreal, as things were burning down and destruction across the streets of downtown Montreal, where the nation took notice, they went chaotic, they went burst, they went absolutely crazy, Mr. 50-something-year-old Prime Minister fanboy Justin Trudeau is hanging out with teenage daughters, with teenage girls at a Taylor Swift concert. And just like what happened in Amsterdam when this riot was breaking out and the Netherlands, Macron, other people kind of stepped back and just let it happen, this is adding more to this controversy. This is adding more to the statement. This is why I get skeptical on people saying, well, it's just anti-Semitic. All these people are anti-Semitic. They're anti-Jew. There's this conspiracy that the whole world has become anti-Jew now. I don't believe that. Because there would have been certain measures taken in place in regards to it. The fact that Justin Trudeau is compliant to Israel. He does pander towards Palestine, but he is complicit to Israel and to NATO. Why would he not be worried about having Canadians going against NATO when he's subservient to NATO? But he can dance around with a bunch of teenagers at a Taylor Swift concert. Let's see this again. Okay. Well, maybe when he steps down finally, hopefully, thank God, maybe as a Christmas present, we should all gather together and give him some dancing lessons, because holy crap. That is some serious white guy dancing. Like, who the hell does this? Who the hell does that to a teenage girl watching Taylor Swift? What kind of grown-ass man goes to a Taylor Swift concert and does this to a friggin' girl? That's just no. That's not right. It's not right whatsoever. Which is why I have stated, and here's him taking a selfie with one of the fans down there. I don't know if that's his daughter or if that's just one of the people at the Swift concert. And he's taking a selfie there. He's, smiling with his thumb up in the air. And I stated that I was friends with Jeffrey Epstein from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's not forget, he was on Epstein's list. And he's going to a Taylor Swift concert with a bunch of, teenage, maybe underage girls with a bunch of bracelets, as you can see there. That is an unhealthy amount of bracelets. No grown man. And I'm not anti-bracelet. I'm not anti, jewelry. I don't care if, guys wear the necklace or the jewelry or whatever. But that's an unornament amount of bracelets for a man of his stature to wear. Oh, that's just absolutely chaotic. So, April Color pointed this out, saying, under the guise of Free Palestine quickly escalating to riots, pro-Hamas demonstrators unleashed chaos into downtown Montreal Friday, smashing windows and torching cars. So, again, that the whole, what I'm stating here is that the whole intention is to bring these instigators in to demise the actual Free Palestine movement. The reason why people are coming out is to support a ceasefire movement and find a solution so that both Israeli people and the people of Gaza and Palestine can live in some sort of civilized society peacefully and not go through the militarized destruction of warlords like Benjamin Netanyahu, who for the longest time, wanted to advance and escalate warfare with all these different nations. The whole purpose and intent of Israel even being there is the fact that it's an aircraft carrier, to quote RFK Jr., so that our military, our occupations, Mossad, CIA, international intelligence, can use that colonized land space to go after other Middle Eastern countries and exploit those needs. That's the whole intent of it. And these people just want peace. They just want to have negotiations. The same people are coming against NATO because they don't want to be subjugated into nuclear war. I don't want that. You don't want that. I don't want to be sacrificed for a bunch of demonic elites. God, no. So that's why these people came out. And of course, they can't allow that. They can't have that to happen because then people might question NATO. They might question why they're protesting. So they escalated purposely to a full-blown riot. And as this guy points out, this is perfectly well said. The crazier thing about the Montreal riot is that CSIS and the RCMP would have completely known it was about to happen, briefed the PMO and the other two levels of government, and Justin Trudeau, Val Palente, and Francois Legault, all three of them let it happen anyway. Just like they happened with Amsterdam. Just like it happened with January 6th. Just like it happened numerous times beforehand. It's the exact same playbook. Plante and Legault hid inside their homes like cowards while Justin Trudeau partied at a Taylor Swift concert. That takes some serious acknowledgement. Take note of that. That while this was going on, and while they have the technology, they have the advancements to be prepared for situations like this, they knew this was going to happen. Why wouldn't they be briefed on this? Why wouldn't there be a briefing? Not even if they didn't notify Trudeau because he was, partying with a bunch of girls at a Taylor Swift concert. Even if they notified the leader in Quebec, even if they notified the premier or the Bloc Québécois or somebody to inform them and try to de-escalate the tensions, they didn't do it. And they did it intentionally because they want to demise the whole intention of what a Free Palestine movement is. They want to deminimize and squash down, just like they do with every other anti-imperialistic, militarized, establishment coalition. They did with January 6th. They tried to minimize the MAGA movement. They tried to minimize the Maha movement. And it's because the deep state truly fears that people will start looking at Free Palestine. They'll look at what's happening in Gaza. They'll look at what's happening overseas. And they'll understand that their tax dollars that is draining away from this nation, putting people on the streets dying of shelter, of thirst, of hunger, of everything in between, dying off in the streets here in Canada, to flourish the needs of the military-industrial complex, hell-bent on destruction of the world. And that's what we're dealing with right now. That's why we have NATO getting ready and telling all of its NATO allies, hey, you got to prep for World War III. You got to prep for nuclear war. How can we do that? How can we do that when it's already escalated to that point? We don't have bunkers. We don't have shelters. Where are people supposed to go? Where are people supposed to go? And that's why these people came out to those rallies in a peaceful demonstration. As we saw earlier, they were showing their faces. They were dressed in actual clothing. But then all of a sudden, these just random people dressed all in black, look like instigators from previous iterations of rallies that turn into riots, happen to just destroy it all in path to minimize the true intentions and purpose, exactly the whole intention of all this.